I just did because you get a copy of this recording when we're done.
Okay,
so that you can go back and review if you need to, or, you know, if you forget to take notes on something like that, you don't have to worry too much about it, but I forgot to hit record on my last one.
That's good.
Yeah, but I forgot to do that last time, and it was like right near the end, and I realized that I'm going, okay, well, it wasn't a complex thing, so I just did a written one, but that takes more of my time, so I prefer not to do that. I like to just upload it, give you a copy, and then you can do with it as you will. So we're talking about your foreign worker. Your guy is in Canada with his wife and 2 kids. So he's 26 years old. He's already done 2 rounds of the IEC, currently working as a carpenter. Work permit expires February 23rd. So it doesn't really matter that he was under IEC before. He's under now. He extended his visitor for 6 months like he was supposed to, and then he applied for the new work permit. Occupation's not LMI exempt, that's correct, and not enough time to apply for provincial nomination, and I confirmed that. So I called AINP yesterday, and basically she said that because when I looked at the requirements for the Alberta Opportunity Stream, in some areas they said they have to meet this requirement through processing, and that one didn't specify. So I called them and I said, is it only when they apply, or can they get like a bridging open work permit? Because I don't deal with AINP very much. And she said, no, it definitely has to be valid throughout the whole thing. So he's only got a couple of months, so it won't work. So a couple of things that I thought about.
Yep.
So there's ways we can potentially keep him in Canada. Whether that qualifies him for permanent residence at the end or not is debatable. Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. So I'm just going to look at your options here. Yes, we can extend his request as a visitor. You have to have a good reason for doing so, though. So that's something you consider, so that's a possibility. Going back to school, yes, that's a possibility as well. Now, when we're talking about AINP, though, his education that he takes that he can get extra points for and that kind of thing, and then he can get the work and that kind of thing, has to be related. So what he takes in study, then he has to take work in. So those 2 things have to be related in order for him to qualify under AINP, under the Alberta Opportunity Stream. So to do anything like carpentry, though, is a trade, and it's going to be almost impossible to get a study permit for that purpose.
Actually thinking more so about his spouse to go back to school, and then
that's where I was actually going to go at some point here. I'm just going to go over what you have here because you've done a lot of work. You did a lot of great background work on this. I'm very impressed.
Thank you. I've spent a lot of time on this.
I got to tell you, I got consultants who have actually been practicing longer than I have. I have a lot of extra background stuff, so they still come to me. That kind of makes sense. They've actually been practicing longer than I have who don't do this much detail. So this is good. You're really using the skills you have. Keep doing that because you will hone them, and it will not be long before you are excellent at this.
Thank you.
So I'm, like I said, very impressed. LMIA applications by the employer, that's a possibility, but of course we found out that there's a moratorium on a lot of trades positions, including carpentry. So he won't get an LMIA in Alberta. And then finding another employer with an existing unnamed LMIA. I don't know a lot about unnamed LMIA, so what I do know about them is pretty basic. I don't know what the expiries on them are. So I know the moratorium on certain trades has been in for a while now, so I don't know if you'll find them. That's going to be the only thing, okay? So I guess my first question to the client will be, how set are you on remaining in Alberta? It's a logical question because that moratorium only exists in Alberta. I believe there are carpentry jobs in BC. There's probably carpentry jobs in a lot of other provinces as well, including Ontario. So would they consider moving in order to meet the requirements? So that's one question I would ask them.
Okay.
Because, like I said, they could potentially, if he's looking for a job, because the indication here, finding an employer with an existing unnamed LMIA indicates he's not set to potentially work for an employer that he's currently working for. He's looking for something different, which I'm going to assume is permanent residence.
Ideally, yes.
Yeah.
Also, since we went to the LMIA topic, his employer is very fond of him. He likes to keep him. He wants to help him. So we had a quick chat yesterday, and the employer said that he has different positions within the company, and he would be willing to apply for an LMIA for a different position that would be acceptable.
What kind of positions?
And that's something that he's supposed to get back to me on today, but he said finisher. It wouldn't be, of course, it wouldn't be carpenter, right?
Right, but scaffolder also comes under carpenter too. So where does finisher lie in the, hang on here.
That's something that he is supposed to narrow down a little bit and give me ideas to work with. But
I would like to see a job description, ideally.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And scaffolder, I remember that is also not acceptable under an LMIA process.
Exactly, because they fall under the same NOC code, and I knew that because my cousin was a scaffolder, and there was a big controversy because they were considered to be carpenters, and the carpenters had a conniption fit over that. Okay, so depending what kind of furniture, or what kind of finisher. There's furniture refinishers, there's polishers, there's painters. No, that's an exclusion. Yeah, there's a bunch of different kinds of finishers, but if we're looking at wood, furniture finishers finish new wood or metal. I don't think it's furniture. He might fall under drywaller. Mm-hmm. It really depends on what kind of a finisher. So what we would want ideally is a job description. Because then we can fit it within the guidelines of the NOC to see if it comes under a different code that isn't problematic.
Yeah.
Now the issue is going to be
his PR application under the federal scale.
Well, not necessarily, but it could delay that application. Sorry, I'm thinking out loud. It could delay that application. Like, he wouldn't necessarily be eligible to apply like right now for permanent residence. But right now, the point is to get him here in such a way that would allow him to eventually at least apply for permanent residence and keep him here legally, right? And the big thing that we're dealing with is the moratorium on a lot of trades in Alberta. That's a huge thing that we're dealing with. So this is one thing we can do. Now, so you mentioned getting the spouse on a work permit, or sorry, a study permit. That is a valid way of doing things, and I was going to mention that too, because depending on what she wants to do, if she goes in under a program, say you get her into a 2-year program, he gets a 2-year work permit, open work permit. So then the employer doesn't need to do LMIA. Mm-hmm. Okay. So then, if he can get in under, okay, now that specific work permit doesn't qualify under the Alberta stream. So that's one of the things to look at, is because when I looked at the requirements, it was the postgraduate work permit, the international mobility, IEC, not international mobility, the IEC program specifically, LMIA-based work permits did not include international mobility. So as a spouse, it didn't specify that it included it.
I see. Okay.
So he may not be eligible under that. However, he may become eligible under Federal Skilled Trades, Federal Skilled Worker, or CEC. And that gives him enough time to figure it out, whereas right now he doesn't have a whole lot of time. So I don't know, we really have enough information about what he's doing. If the employer likes him that much, it wants to put him in a position to help him to stay here and work for him. Obviously, he doesn't want to go to another province. So what we want to do in that case is find a way to keep him here, and at least in the interim, it might be getting her into school and then having him come as an accompanying dependent. The issue here is that he doesn't have 6 months left on his work permit, so she may have to apply outside of Canada if she's eligible. Where are they from? They're from Poland, right?
They're from Poland.
And so what kind of things would she be interested in taking? Does she need language? That could cause a problem, because if she can't get into a program without a language upgrade or a language training, he wouldn't qualify for the work permit at that point.
Exactly.
Right. So another thing we can look at is, like I said, that is a valid way of looking at things, is to get an LMIA in a different category, but we would really need the job description or job descriptions that he's looking for. So then you're looking at two applications. You're looking at the LMIA application, then you're looking at his work permit application. You really need to get on that quickly, though, because there's only, it'll take a little bit more than 2 months before his status expires. It's going to take a month for the advertising. It's going to take, from what I'm hearing, they're delayed on the LMIA applications. I don't know. I haven't done one recently. I haven't done one in a really long time in that category either, so I don't know for sure. But by the time that's all done, he might be out of status. So what you want to do in that case is the last week or 2 weeks before his work status expires is prepare a visitor record extension. So that what you do is you do that by a paper copy, paper application, and then you mail it in before his status expires.
Because it takes longer to process.
Yes, yes. In some cases, it is really beneficial that there are huge backlogs because you can use those. So what that does is it's going to give him about 4 to 5 months to be allowed to stay in Canada before they make a decision on his application. They're not really being quicker with much quicker with online applications, but they are still quicker, and sometimes they get pulled out and sent to other offices for processing as well. You don't want to risk that. You want a paper application where it actually literally sits in a bin waiting for its turn. And so you're looking at, I mean, unless they try to get caught up and that kind of thing, but you're still looking at probably about 4 months before it's processed, before they moved Vegreville to Edmonton.
Is there any way that the visitor record would be issued for longer than 6 months, or is it the maximum amount of time that it's issued for?
Well, they could issue it for longer if there's good reason, but the reason that we're delaying it is because we're going to get probably about 5, maybe even 6 months just waiting under implied status. 5 or 6 months. And then they're going to say, okay, well, do you really still want to stay? And then they'll make a decision, so they may extend it for 6 months beyond that, depending on what you need. So especially on his reason, because you can say we're waiting for LMIA approval on this employment. I have enough money to keep myself, and on and on and on. But you got to watch, because now if he goes on visitor status, if you don't have the wife on student status, his kids can't study. Okay, so they can up until the time that he his work permit expires.
I see.
So.
Okay.
So I'm just throwing a bunch of stuff out to you, then we'll figure out a logical way of trying to deal with it all.
Yes, because they're both will be on a visitor status, and temporary foreign workers.
Exactly. So, So ideally what he should have done, although I don't know if he could have, actually I don't think he could have, because the IEC program is unique, is that it doesn't support dependents. Technically speaking. So his kids probably shouldn't have been studying. What I would look at, okay, let me think here. The biggest issue we're dealing with is time for his work permit. We don't have a lot of time before it expires. Getting something new in place is going to probably, in most cases, take longer than what he has. We still need to maintain status, but we're trying to keep them as stable as possible. So if we turned around and we looked at husband and wife separately, at least for now, she can't apply from within Canada because his work. Okay, I gotta confirm this because I know it's the other way around. Hang on. I think he has to have 6 months left on his work permit before she qualifies to apply inland for her study permit. I'm thinking out loud. Study permit in Canada. Okay. Let me just see here. That's what I want.
No problem.
Okay, this doesn't tell. Studying, it just tells you when you can study. It doesn't tell you when you can apply. I hate it when they change this and they aren't.
So like all the time.
Oh, I know. And this one, I'm just not sure. So, okay. So I'm going to get you to make a note of this. Okay. So if we apply for a study permit for her to CBC Edmonton, let's put a note beside that. We need to check how long the validity of his status has to be in order to apply. I think it has to be at least 6 months validity, but it might be just the opposite way. So a student has to have 6 months validity for their spouse to apply. I'm not sure if it's the opposite way. So we need to check that.
Okay. Okay. But without being even accepted to a program, like that takes time too, right? Like
not necessarily. That can actually be pretty quick. Do you have a KFIC membership?
I do.
Okay, so what you can do is you have a conversation with her. What do you want to do? Do you want to go back to school? Do you want to take a 2-year program? And that kind of thing, because this can fill the bridge, especially if we don't have a length of time validity for him, because something's telling me there may not be one. If there isn't one, you can get accepted anytime before he finishes his work permit. This might work. This actually might work, but you have to verify that one thing because I'm not 100% sure on it. If she's eligible to apply for a work permit from within Canada, you can submit both applications together. Okay. And for the kids, I would recommend getting them study permits, to be honest, because it makes life so much easier for you afterwards. Okay. So I would apply for her study permit. So getting acceptance to a DLI, ask her what she wants to do. If she's got some ideas and some schools she's thinking she might want to attend. Is she in Edmonton? She's in Edmonton? No, where are they from? Calgary. Okay.
Calgary, yeah.
So then what you can do is you can go onto the forums and say, I have a student who's interested in getting admittance to college whatever, say Red Deer College, because that's the first thing that came to my mind. Is anybody an agent for them that can help me gain admittance? You'll get in contact with somebody usually, or she can try applying herself. She can try applying for January and she can try applying for May. And because by the time they look at the application, it's probably going to be May anyways, right? If you submit her application and the kids' applications and his application, they all have implied status. They can all stay. He can continue working because you applied for a work permit for him. The kids can apply for study permits. They're already eligible to study right now. They can keep studying. So everything hinges on whether or not there has to be a minimum validity period on his work permit for her to be eligible. So that's what we need to look up. Everything falls apart if there is.
Now, question: if it's a dual application where she's applying for a study permit, he's applying for a work permit, based on the fact that he will be most likely working in Canada after he gets his work permit, does the proof of funds have to be validated?
Yes, but if he's already got a job and he's got a job offer letter from his employer and he's already been working there, that can also play a factor into their finances. Now, chances are the kids probably won't have to pay a fee. In Alberta, they're usually free, so double check that with the school board, but I'm pretty sure that they're free. not in BC in all areas, but in Alberta they are, because it's run by the provincial government. Okay. But the wife will have to pay international fees.
Can that dual application be submitted online?
Yes. In that case, you can submit it online because you don't mind if it's processed sooner.
Okay.
Right? Because you want her to have the study permit so that she can start school. Right? Mm-hmm. Having said that, even if it's processed later, like say for May intake or something like that, September gets a little dicey because we're looking at close to a year waiting time. And so whether they're going to issue it this early is questionable. So you probably want to ideally try to get something for May intake at some college, if you can, something that is eligible, so preferably a public institution, not a private one. And some kind of I would recommend no less than a 2-year degree program, something that's a serious program that isn't obviously just meant to keep the husband in Canada to do something else, right? They want legitimate students is the reason why. Mm-hmm. So that's something that I would be looking at.
Okay.
Let me see here. I'm still trying to find that spot where it might say 6 months or less. Foreign minor children. I know why I'm not finding it. Just a minute here.
Okay, see, well,
let me just see here.
It is an option. The only downside of this would be, of course, the cost of the program.
Right.
But there's huge advantages for sure.
Well, the advantage is that you can probably keep everybody stable.
Mm-hmm. Studying.
Hang on a second here. I think I might have found it. Here's the skilled worker international student. Just give me a second here. Okay, so if your spouse is a skilled worker,
yeah.
So this wouldn't be the case. Then the work permit has to be valid for 6 months or longer.
At the time of
yeah, so this isn't their case. There's no restriction here about the 6 months.
So technically, she could.
I would confirm this with colleagues, but yeah, because when I'm looking at this, hang on, I'll show you. Just give me a sec.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime now. Mm-hmm. My program doesn't like me. There we go. Okay, I don't want that. I want this one here. Okay, so do you see the types of work permits?
Yep.
Okay. So if you're looking, just here, find my pen. If you're looking here, right here it says 6 months for worker, but this is for spouse of a skilled worker. But if you're going for spouse of a student, it doesn't show any restrictions. I would argue that she's eligible to apply. Oh, wait a minute here. No, hang on here. That's wrong. I got confused for a second. Okay, so he can apply as long as she's, okay, let me think. Let me start this again in my thought process. Yeah. He can apply for an open work permit as long as she holds a study permit. Okay, so now we need to find out about applying for a study permit. Applying for study permit, oops, give me a second here. There we go. I got to get rid of this pen here. There we go. Okay. So the worker applies the permit. Okay, let's go. Who can apply? Can't spell today. For study permit in Canada. This is what I want. Who can apply for a study permit?
Oh, there it is, within Canada, yeah.
A minor student who's accompanying a worker. A student who's completed that's not its spouse. Who's in Canada and applied for permanent residence. Huh.
Very bottom, last one.
Family with valid work or study permits to stay in Canada. Oops, no, I don't want that one. Okay, so there's two issues here. Okay, so the first one is, I know this is really, really vague, so I actually want to confirm it with legislation. But that's what I was thinking, is that she might be eligible just because he still has a work permit. So she's still accompanying him. She still wants to study. They do accept that they switch positions sometimes, and that can be okay. She could even apply under the IEC if she hasn't done it before, but he can't accompany her, which is probably why she's on a visitor record.
Mm-hmm.
So, so that's the problem with that. So if we confirm that that she's eligible here, even though his is going to expire in 2 months, and I think that he can. So we want to check the regs. We want to check those and confirm that I think he's okay. So she can apply for the study permit. He can apply for the work permit at the same time. The kids can apply for study permits at the same time because they weren't eligible before. And you can submit that either online or by paper application. Everybody has implied status. So the wife can stay. She can't start school though. So the husband can stay. He can continue working because he did apply for an eligible work permit. The kids can study as well based on their current reason for being here. So that keeps everybody stable. It's not a guarantee, and it's not going to be particularly quick. Even if you apply online, it's probably going to be 3 to 4 months. So again, we're looking at probably a May intake. Or we can apply with paper application for September intake, because we're probably looking at about 4 or 5 months. So if we apply, so she gets a September intake, and we apply as long as we confirm this, that she's eligible no matter how long that status is valid till, then we could submit the application, say, end of January, beginning of February. And then it's not looking at a huge period of time from the time of approval to the time of school starting. So it becomes more reasonable. You know, it's early enough that she should get the study permit in time to start studying for September, but ideally you want to apply now and have her start in May, because you still want to give as much time as possible. So that's one route, and it keeps everybody stable. Alternatively, we have time, if she truly wants to study in Canada and has a good study plan, she can apply outside of the country. So it's either going to be approved in Los Angeles or in Poland, or whatever office deals with Poland. I think that might be Vienna, but I'm not sure. If it's Vienna, that's actually a positive thing. I would probably actually send a paper application there, because Vienna doesn't use a VAC. Just a second here. Visa office, Poland.
We're talking about a scenario if she's not eligible to apply from within Canada, right?
Well, not necessarily that she's not eligible to apply, but it might be faster it might be more beneficial. So I guess what is it here? So it looks like they do go through VAC.
Mhm.
I hate dealing with them. I do.
Okay, well, let's not do that.
I've just heard too many horror stories about them extorting money from clients and changing applications and things like that. I think it's still Vienna. I have an ethical issue. I really have an ethical issue dealing with that. That being said, that it's a toss-up because I guess maybe they are dealing with VACs now. Anyways, it's a toss-up because online applications can literally go anywhere, and Los Angeles is notorious for refusals. Mm-hmm. So you really do kind of, take your chances, right? So you kind of have to weigh the options. Ideally, in this case, I would like to see them applying in Canada because their chances are way better because they've already been here for a long time. They've already shown that well, not even humanitarian compassionate. They've already proved that they can establish themselves, and they've got money to support themselves, and they've already got a history of compliance. Mm-hmm. So really, that's what it is. So they've got a history. The whole family's been here. Nobody's had to take welfare or work illegally and that kind of thing, and that's been a good thing. So they've got a really good chance. So again, as long as she's eligible to apply for her study permit within Canada, that will be ideally what you're going to do, and then you're going to apply for the entire family at the same time. Yep. You mentioned that he appears to be eligible for foreign skilled trade.
Yes.
Okay, so have you done the double? Okay, so doing any kind of an assessment for any express entry programs is a 2 steps. So we want to make sure that they actually meet the eligibility. Yep. And then meet the CRS requirements. So is he within the range to gain federal skilled trades with the experience that he's got?
Yes, he has 24 months of experience in Canada. I know it doesn't have to be in Canada, but it is. Mm-hmm. Is a carpenter.
Okay.
His IELTS results, this is the only program that he would be able to apply under because his IELTS results are CLB5 for speaking and listening and CLB4 for reading and writing.
Okay, and what was the minimum for trade? Was it 4?
Yeah, it's 4 for reading and writing and 5 for speaking and listening.
No, but for the trade program, is the minimum is it a CLB4?
Yes.
Okay, so he does meet the minimum language requirements, which is good. Yeah. Okay, so this is a viable option. So in this case, what we're looking for is buying time now, if he's eligible for that.
In regards to the federal skilled trades class, one of the requirements is either a valid job offer or a certificate of qualification, right?
Right.
So now, in case if we went ahead with an LMIA in a different occupation that he's working in right now, okay? Let's say he's working as a finisher right now, whatever that means.
Right.
His experience under the program is as a carpenter, but his job offer would be as a finisher. Would that be a valid job offer if it's not matching the experience?
Okay, just give me a second here. I just want to see, because the thing is, if he doesn't need support of LMIA, and I'm not sure he does, if you have a valid job offer, you need to update your player name if you have one.
I don't think
a valid job offer has to be made by one employer, continuous paid, full-time, for at least 1 year after we issue the visa, not seasonal, not contract, in a NOC 0A or B level. It must be made by an employer with the new let me share this with you here. Sorry.
Yeah, I have that in front of me as well. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's it. Okay. So let's see here. must be made with a new LMI that indicates the offer and names you in the position, or if you're currently working in Canada under NOC 0A or B job on a work permit that was issued based on LMIA and working for an employer, et cetera, or if you have a valid work permit for a NOC 0A or B job that is exempt from needing LMIA and you are currently working for an employer specified on the work permit.
Yes.
Have 1 year experience. Okay. Well, this makes no sense here. Do you notice this? Exempt from needing LMIA.
Mm-hmm.
Employer specified on work permit.
Well,
because not all LMIAs.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it just basically says that an open work permit would not qualify for a valid job offer.
That's what I'm wondering.
But his work permit isn't open. Like, this is his second IEC, and it is employer specific because it's young professional.
It is employer specific.
Yes.
Okay, but if he switches to spouse of student, then it won't be.
Exactly, right? So he won't have a job offer then. But
right.
He will if he has an LMIA. But my question is,
okay, so now if we are looking that he's obviously he wants to stay in Alberta based on the discussion with these. Let's assume he wants to stay in Alberta.
Yeah.
If we can move him out of Alberta, we can probably easily deal with this.
I think focus on Alberta. I think they're pretty.
And the thing that bugs me is that a lot of these trades, you get employers who say we can't find anybody at all, right? So it makes no sense whatsoever. There's one guy I heard of. I think it was an auto finisher, car finisher. He did body work. Guy has been advertising for 3 years. Can't find anybody. There's a moratorium on the trade though. He can't get anybody to come in. So he shut down a lot of his. Like he had several businesses. He had to shut most of them down because he couldn't find employees to do the work.
That's unfortunate, right?
It's so unfortunate. I mean, you would think that if somebody can't find somebody, even if there's a moratorium, that they could then, if they can prove it,
exactly,
then be considered under an exemption. So I don't know. I have an issue with the provinces making weird decisions like this and that kind of thing. But so our choices for this guy are to switch okay, so basically what we're coming down to is our choices for him are to switch him to a different kind of work permit, but that could risk his eligibility for permanent residence by doing that, because then he won't be eligible in some cases. So in this case, we're looking at this year's as he has to be named, and he wouldn't be. He can't get LMIA, and so he can't get, he can't do this. So because he can't get LMIA. So
do you think the valid job offer, if he had an LMIA, has to be in the same trade that he's claiming experience for?
Well, the thing is that, okay, I'm not sure about federal skilled trade. I know somebody I can ask. Let me see here.
Because if not, with a new LMIA and a new position, he could still potentially qualify under this program.
Right, because he's still got an LMIA. It's just not in where he's got his experience, right? Yeah. Okay. Let me just see here. Start date, employer name.
We're looking at the very big picture right now. Like we're looking.
Yeah. Well, there's two ways we can go about this, really. Okay. So he needs, what kind of work experience does he need? Does he need any?
24 months in one trade.
In one trade, but it doesn't say that it has to be related, right? He's got to have, hang on here, where does it say? Because he can work for more than one employer, but it has to be in a skilled trade occupation. So these are the trade occupations, starting with 72, 73, 82, 83, and these two here, which I don't know what they are.
I think it might be saying it on the previous page under the general requirements. Okay, here, have a valid job offer of full-time employment for a total period of at least 1 year, or a certificate of qualification in that skilled trade.
5 years before applying job requirements for that skilled trade. Okay, have that job offer. Total at least 1 year certification qualification issued by Canadian Provincial. Okay. Is there a certificate of qualification for that trade, for carpentry?
I can actually check that quickly. Alberta, trade secret or something like this. Okay, here we go. Trade and occupations, list, carpenter. Okay, so I already checked it. You can work without the certificate of qualification.
But is there one?
Recognized work for employer. Recognized credential. It looks like there is one, yes.
If he writes that, he doesn't need the job offer.
That's right.
Because if we go back here, he must have a valid job offer, full-time employment for a total of 1 year, or a certificate of qualification in that skilled trade issued by Canadian provincial, territorial, or federal authority. So if he doesn't have that job offer, or he can have the job offer, but he doesn't need it if he's got the certificate of qualification. So that's something he's prepared to do, because I don't think he needs to study for that. He just needs to take a test, which means he doesn't need a study permit. So I'm just thinking in the carpentry aspect of it, you might be able to do it that way. So if you do that, then it makes it far more valid to put the wife on the study permit, him as the accompanying dependent, because then it doesn't matter what his work is, as long as he's got the work ability to support the family and he's got the open work permit. It doesn't matter what kind of work he's got. He can still provide a letter of offer. It's just bonus, but the certificate of qualification will qualify him for the program. So, but you want to keep him working, right? You want to keep him stable. So by doing it that way, then he doesn't even need the letter of offer. You can put him in. And then assuming he gets nomination, then you submit the PR application. She can continue going to school until they're landed, and then she can actually go in as a permanent resident. She can complete her education or quit or whatever she wants to do at that point, right? It doesn't matter. They're permanent residents at that time, and they've got their permanent residence based on him. Yeah. So even though we're looking at a potential 2-year program for her for studying, she can either do it, she'll do it partially under an international, as long as they've got the money to show it, right? Or the means to show that she's capable of doing the study at that time. She can qualify for to get the study permit to keep everybody here and to finalize their permanent resident application. Then she can do what she wants with the education. But even if she wants to continue, she'll be a permanent resident at that point. So she should be able to then qualify for the non-international fees. So she'll have to kind of put up with it temporarily. So if you do that, where's my okay. Where am I? Okay, yeah, we're just going back here. Okay, so that's what the job offer is. So when we're going, so this just tells us about the job offers and what's accepted. But then when we're going back to the, so he needs to meet the language requirements, which you've said he already does. He does have at least 2 years work experience, at least in Canada. If he's got more experience, even better. Meet the job requirements for the skill set out in the NOC, except for needing a certificate of qualification. And then if he can get that certificate of qualification, that actually makes it flow quite nicely, because you can keep them here and keep them fairly stable while you're waiting. that gives him a good reason for you to apply for those other documents as well. He needs to stay here because he's taking the certification of qualifications so that he knows if he's eligible for permanent residence.
Yeah. Now, if he didn't take the certificate of qualification and we use the LMIA route and he was working in a different position, and he no longer qualified for the federal skilled trades class because he doesn't have a valid job offer, do you think the possibility of a provincial nomination and then paper-based application for provincial nominees would be an option too here?
Well, I'm not sure whether it's paper or whether it's electronic based for the application itself. However, if he's not in a prohibited occupation, which it's not, this isn't prohibited under the PNP program. It's prohibited under the, basically Alberta has just said we're not, Alberta Service Canada has said they're not approving these for some reason. The provincial government says, no, we don't need them, we don't want them, we don't want them applying. And the specificity, there's no other province where it's specified like that. And there's a very specific list of occupations. So if he doesn't fall into those occupations, yeah, he would probably qualify under that. The issue is going to be he's now going to have to gain the required work experience in order to qualify. So that's going to delay the, what do you call it, that's going to delay the application. That's going to delay the PR application, but if he can't get his, he won't be able to use the spouse of a student work permit to get there because it's not an allowed LMIA exemption. But if he's able to get LMIA in that certain category, he should be able to qualify. So let's bring this up, Alberta Opportunity Stream. Oh, that's not what I want. I don't want another consultant stuff. Oh, it's so annoying. That's what I want. Okay, so when I looked at this, and there were, like I said, there were a couple things that I wanted to check as well. So you must have a valid work permit, so not implied status or restoration. Yep. And this is where I had said to them, I had called them because this wasn't clear, because it didn't say that it had to be throughout the entire process, whereas, hang on. I talked
to them a couple of times as well.
Yeah, well, way down here, they're talking about something else where it did specify that it has to be throughout the entire process. So that was one of the things that I called, but they're really good about answering your questions. So, so as far as that goes, just go erase that. Okay, so that works. That's one thing. I actually know quite a number of people that that work there. So, and they're also former immigration officers like me. I worked with a lot of them, so they've kind of got the same training as I am. We try to be helpful rather than hindering. So when we're looking at the opportunity stream, so these are the requirements: the positive LMIA, or these are the exceptions, right? So like I said, spouse of a student doesn't fall in there. So yes, so this is going to be like NAFTA or CETA or something like that. Workers to those intercompany transferees, working holiday or working whatever, you know, the thing that your guy's on right now, but he doesn't have enough time left, and mobility francophone. So if they don't have French skills, that's not going to work, or postgraduate work permit, which they don't have. Okay. And so the only other option for them at this point is going to be LMIA, and he can't get it under what he's doing. So it doesn't specify that, but okay, I got to find where.
Basically, if he's going to be in an open work permit, for
it has to be under.
He won't qualify for a valid job offer for the federal skilled trades class, and he won't qualify for the provincial nominee.
Right, which is weird because he actually would qualify in BC with an open work permit. He could do it here.
That the option of going back to school for his wife and then him getting that work permit doesn't really get.
It won't help him. It won't help him for this except to buy him time. If we're looking at, okay, so to buy him time that would work, and it would get her into school so he could then continue to work. He might qualify elsewhere, though. So if we were to look at I wonder if you qualify under federal skilled worker. His language skills wouldn't be good enough.
No.
No. Okay,
And
so that's where he's going to fail.
Good enough for Canadian experience class either, and he also wouldn't have enough points to just be. His points aren't that strong. His points are good enough for skills trades class.
But with extra time, he might be able to improve his points. But his language skills, we wouldn't. I doubt he'd be able to strengthen them enough to make a CLB 7, because that's what he needs.
Exactly.
Right? He's in a knock B, so he'd qualify under skill level, but he wouldn't qualify under that. So if he qualified under a federal program, aside from the LMIA issue, if he didn't need the LMIA, if his experience was good enough, because a lot of the federal skills, it's not a work to permanent residence scheme. It's a straight permanent residence scheme. So he could apply. The only thing is his language is going to fail him in that case. So federal skills trade is definitely still going to be the better bet for him. But now we need to qualify him. So what I would think, so I think that we do need to get the further information from the employer. We want the job duties. Finisher, how is the finisher? We want the full job duties and the description of what he'll be doing, and let's try to equate it to a knock. Ideally, just a minute here. Ideally, we can get him to something else, but he's just going to need time to get the experience. But some of them, like the federal skilled worker or a federal skilled worker, doesn't require experience in the same occupation, but he's still not going to make the language. I'm not too sure about the trade. I have to check on that. So here's a list of occupations in Alberta. It's only Alberta. See, high wage, low wage occupation in Alberta. We will not process this, and no other province. So real estate, advertising, engineering managers, architecture, science managers, computers, whatever. Okay. Business and finance, supervisors, no. Okay. Natural applied science, geoscientists and oceanographers. Of course. Who needs an oceanographer in Alberta? Okay, so you know what? That one makes sense. But geoscientists.
I've never seen that before. Wow.
Civil engineers, electrical engineers, construction estimators, so that one's not going to work. Industrial designers. Okay, here we go. Contractor supervisors, pipe fitting, iron workers, electrical, industrial electricians, plumbers, carpenters, insulators, this is the one, motor vehicle body repairs and crane operators. Let's just make sure it's not there. Okay, so if we can fit him into something that is not these, you should be okay.
Then it should be okay. But then, again, if he keeps working in a different...
I have to check on that. I'm not sure, because in the federal skilled workers, they don't have to be related. It's just work experience.
What I'd really like to know is if the valid job offer under the federal skilled trades class has to match the experience code.
That's what I'm saying. In federal skilled workers, it doesn't have to. And I believe in CEC it doesn't either. I'm still learning parts of those two. I know them fairly well, but there's little questions like this I'm not sure. But I know in those two, they don't necessarily have to match. Right? So chances are good in the federal skilled trades they may not have to match. But I do have somebody I can ask that of if I can't figure it out myself. So I will look at that there. Just give me a second. I'm just going to give myself a note.
That'd be huge help.
Yeah, I'm just going to send myself a note here. What time is it? Okay, we're good here. I'm good for time. I've got, I do my live session at 5. So let's see here. New. Come on. I guess I can use this one here. Just give me a second here. I use these lovely little things as notepads, and then I close them. I close them and I look at them later and I go, I have no idea what that is. I hope it's not important. Okay, so find out if experience in federal skills trade program needs to match LMIA support. Okay, so that's my note to me. So that's what we have to find out, and also can spouse apply for SP if only 2 months remaining on PA's work permit. Okay, because they used to be able to do that. It never used to be a problem. There was never any restrictions, but then there also weren't restrictions on doing the other way either. So I can confirm this with a friend of mine who's still an immigration officer.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you so much.
And she answers my questions right. She's not really supposed to, but she does. But I don't ask specifics about the clients. I just ask for general. And that's why whenever you hear me, if you ever hear me speak, and I'll say unofficially, that means that I got that from somebody who works in immigration who's not allowed to tell me.
Isn't that such a great source of information, though? You're lucky.
And I know everybody there.
Perfect.
I know everybody. So that works really good. I love that. Okay, so so those would be the two ways that I would deal with that. I would consider, I don't think you're specifically in a huge rush at this moment. Ideally, you would have done this months ago. Yeah. And then he would have qualified under the PNP program. But if we can avoid LMIA as a carpenter or get LMIA in another way, I think that will work. Mm-hmm. The only concern that I have is that at some point he might have to go on to visitor status if you don't also do the other route of working, getting the work permit as the spouse of a student. So if they decide not to go that route, then he'll have to go on to visitor status, and then he can't work until this is decided.
That actually leads me to a question. This is something that probably you will not recommend, but I'm sure a lot of people do it. What about submitting an application for a work permit extension that you know will fail?
That's an ethical thing. Look up Carl Benito. So you can do that on your own time. C-A-R-L B-E-N-I-T-O. There will be a bunch of news articles. So I'll give you the brief rundown. Carl Benito was an RCIC who's recently been arrested for fraud, immigration fraud, real estate fraud. And
this answer does not start well.
You're getting the idea. He was also an MLA in Edmonton. Okay? One of his big things to do was to do exactly that, and there was huge criticism by IRCC about how unethical it is and how it goes out that it violates the Code of Professional Ethics for ICCRC. A lot of people, including senior consultants, have said we do it all the time. We don't see a problem with it. But when that article came out, we got a very clear indication of what IRCC feels about it and what ICCRC feels about it. So at this point, I would say do not apply for something you know he clearly won't be eligible for. It's not ethical to begin with.
I told the client, because this was an idea that came up, that I wouldn't represent them in such application.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is if he's not eligible, you know it's going to get refused. It does buy time, but it's an ethical thing. It really is. But the thing is if he wants to do that, apply for the study permit. Here's the thing. If you can turn around and show that she meets the requirement for the study permit, and so even if you delay it, so if you turn around, you get her admittance for September, and you're submitting the application close, assuming that we confirm that she's allowed to do that, that we send in the application, say, beginning of February, okay? She's not going to be able to study yet anyways.
Yeah.
That's going to buy them, if we send it by paper, that's going to buy them, she's probably not going to see anything till August anyways. He can keep working. He has implied status. He has authorization to work. He can continue to work. He's currently on. Is he occupation specific or just employer specific right now?
Occupation specific.
He's also occupation. Okay, so that can be problematic because he can. Well,
you know what? Let me double check. Let me double check that quickly. But I'm pretty sure there's occupation on. Just one moment. Yep, carpenter, finisher. There's an occupation on it.
Oh, finisher is on there though.
Carpenter, finisher.
So what kind of finisher does he want to change to? Is there, give me a sec.
I'm sure he can come up with a different position. Honestly, the employer seems very, he likes them. He wants to help them out. And I'm sure there's more than 2 positions in carpentry that are skilled. It's just, I don't know the field, so it's hard for me to just come up with something on the fly.
What exactly does he do?
Carpentry.
What kind of carpentry? Because my uncle's a carpenter, and he started out. He builds houses, but then he developed this power plug thing that he got. I don't know, and somehow it's part of carpentry as well. But then there's carpenters that make furniture or fine carpentry and stuff like this. So, okay, so but if he's a carpenter finisher, then that probably still falls under carpenter. So he'd have to be something different than under carpenter.
Definitely.
Finisher, helper, finisher. Yeah, I don't know. We'd have to have more specifics to know.
Yes.
But if you're thinking of applying for something that is clear, or if he's thinking of applying for something he's clearly not eligible for in order to buy time, why not actually apply for something he would be eligible for in order to buy time? It was going to cost the same thing anyways, or very similar. Because his wife's going to have to apply for an extension of visitor status, right? So that's only $50 less than the study permit is.
Exactly.
His work permit is still going to have to be. He's going to have to add the extra $100 for the open work permit, anyways. The kids ideally should have study permits, but they have to also extend their visitor records regardless. So they have to extend it. So they're going to pay money to extend status anyways. Yeah. So pay a little bit more, apply for something that you're eligible to apply for. There's no misrepresentation, no conflict of interest or ethical issues involved in that. He's eligible.
Yeah.
And then at the same time work on trying to get the LMIA so that even if he has the open work permit, I wonder if that would work. Hang on. Did it say that he had to actually have the LMIA-based work permit or just be supported by LMIA?
For sure.
Because if he had a valid exempt work permit and an LMIA, would that not meet the requirements? Because then he's eligible to apply for that.
I don't get it.
Okay, so what I'm basically saying is if they go and he gets an open work permit
through
as a spouse of a student,
and
then he gets a positive LMIA, does he actually need an LMIA-based work permit?
He doesn't. But the LMIA can be in carpentry, so...
Right. That's what I'm saying, is it still has to be in something else. But I'm saying that if he applies as the spouse of a student, he gets, if she applies for a 2-year program of study, she gets a 2-year study permit.
Yeah.
He gets a 2-year work permit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's valid for 2 years. He gets an LMIA. He has a valid work permit. He's got the LMIA that says he's authorized to work for that. Does he actually need to apply for the new work permit, or do the two meet the requirement of the federal skilled worker? No, this is federal skilled workers. I'm looking for the other one.
It will be there, just a little bit lower, I think.
No, are you sure? Maybe, yes. Okay, so what I'm wondering is, does he actually need to be, oh, yeah, it says listed on the work permit.
Well, he could potentially meet the first provision, but the question is, again, does it have to be the same trade as his experience, right? Because if yes...
Well, we still need to know that, yeah. But
yeah.
the thing is I'm just thinking about the logistics of applying for the, like, rather than applying, like, because, okay, so we're going to have to apply for extensions of their status for sure. So whether that's the visitor or as other things, we have to, because they're going to expire in February.
Yes.
So we have to apply for something to maintain their status.
Yep.
If we apply for, if she's able to get acceptance to a school, and like I said, go onto the KBIC forums and say that you were looking, talk to her first, find out if there's something she wants to do, ideally a 2-year program or more. See if there's people that can help you get her acceptance to a program, ideally either May or September. That's going to determine when you're submitting applications.
Mm-hmm.
And you should be able to get an LOA probably within the next few weeks. If you do it quickly, you might be able to get it before Christmas. So you can start putting together the application packages. But you'll have to you have to find out what schools, you have to talk to the people that are agents for those schools. They'll be able to help you with that. You may even get a kickback on that, a share of the commission on that too. Be bonus, right? So if you're applying for those, he is not going to qualify. He's not going to be able to qualify for much with the open work permit in Alberta, either under the federal skilled trades or under the PNP, but it buys him time. So you can still use the experience, right? But what I'm wondering is if his employer manages, so if he turns around, so I'm just trying to figure out how to explain what I mean here. So what I'm wondering is that if he has an open work permit and he has an LMIA, assuming that he can use employment for the federal skilled trades that isn't the same as his offer, does he actually need the second work permit?
I don't think
so. You have to have the LMIA.
Yeah,
I don't think he has to even be in Canada, so it doesn't matter. So the work permit at that point is only keeping him in Canada and allowing him to work. It's not qualifying him for anything.
So basically,
right?
If he can claim, if the experience and the job offer can be in different trades, there will be ways for him to apply under the federal skilled trades class, you know, in most of the solutions.
Okay, hang on here. So I'm looking at the job. Can you do the job? The officer must be convinced that you will be capable of doing the work you're being offered. Are likely qualified to be licensed or certified by the relevant body. And again, remember that if you wanted to actually go, is this the one where you needed the, yeah, this is the one where you needed the qualification. He could actually, I have a cheat sheet somewhere for this that'll tell me. He doesn't need a work permit for the employer. He only does if he's...
I know what you mean. I think
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if he just was working on an open work permit,
and then
he got this job offer, he just has to prove he can do the job. And they have to be within these NOT codes.
Okay.
I think, okay, so 2 conversations you need to have with the client. The first one is that you have to find out from the wife if she's interested in school, a 2-year program, and if she is, what and where. Because this will help keep them in Canada. Yep. He can qualify for work permit on that basis. She can qualify for the study permit. She does, while this is all in process, have to remain in active pursuit of studies. Otherwise, hers becomes invalid, and that causes a problem. She loses her status. Doesn't affect anybody else, but it affects her. So we don't want to cause problems. So she would have to actually legitimately go to school. So that's the first question. Find out about getting her an LOA. Okay? Yeah. So I'd start that right away. The second thing you want to find out is the potential offers that this employer has. What are the positions? What are the job duties? And let's try to equate them to the NOC. Yep. And see where they fall. My suspicion is that finisher is going to be the same as the carpentry finisher that he's already actually doing. That could be a problem because that's not going to qualify. But let's see if we can qualify him for something similar but not the same. That makes sense. That potentially will allow the employment, the stuff that he did, to still qualify as qualifying employment. But I have to look up. I've got a cheat sheet somewhere that is a really good cheat sheet. I think it includes federal skilled trades. So let me check that and see if there's anything. If I can't find anything, I've got a good source that I can ask. So there won't be any problem getting information back on that. And then, of course, you're also waiting for invitation. They aren't as frequent with federal skilled trades as they are with the others. So he may wait longer than he would under the other ones, but his language isn't going to allow him to come under anything else. So they are viable ways to go. They might be a little bit convoluted. There's still no guarantee that they're going to succeed, but the biggest thing is that if he'd have applied for his permanent residence 6 months ago, he would have been okay. Right, and get invited in the September round. Question for you. So last year, the Federal Skilled Trades class was invited in May and September, specifically that program. Is it always the case, those 2 months, or is it just random? I know it's very limited. As far as I understand, it's random. That's right. But I'm not 100% sure. I know that it's, I mean, because we get like FSW and CEC like every week or 2. So yeah, they did lose a little bit of time because he had his language test results since March last year. Okay. And language is still good. Go ahead. It's still good, exactly. Well, yeah, it's 2 years. It's good for 2 years. Yeah. By the time I feel like that should be fine. He attempted quite a few times though until he got that score. So this. What did he take? IELTS? Yes. Have him try. If he has to take it again, have him try CELPIP. I think he's done that. Okay. You know, and he said that IELTS was turned out better for him. Okay, that's fair. I mean, it can be. It depends on where he learned his English in part. If he learned a British-based system, he's more likely to do better with IELTS. Just because their jargon and terminology and stuff like this is based out of Britain, Australia. And CELPIP is more North American based. So ours is a little bit different. I tend to use a lot of British based stuff. I spend a lot of time watching British and Australian television, and I go there a lot. So I spent most of my summer in Australia. IELTS. Yeah. Well, I mean, I did really well in IELTS, but I didn't know that there was an option for CELPIP at the time. So. But yeah, but having said that, I probably would have done better in CELPIP because I grew up here. So. What do you think most immigrants, from your experience, find easier, CELPIP or? I think it varies. For some reason, the Filipinos tend to do really well in CELPIP. Spanish speakers tend to do well in CELPIP. But again, I think they're more North American based. So, you know, Mexico and South America and Central America are going to be more based in South America rather than that. Chinese do better in IELTS, from my experience. But again, even my student who lives with me, his learning is a British based system. So little things like he kept telling me, like, we need tomato sauce. We need tomato sauce. And I'm going, You're 16. Why do we need tomato sauce? So I need it for my chips. Oh,
Ketchup. Exactly.
Because of course he's asking me as I'm making spaghetti, right? So
I'll take it the same way.
It's right here. But what do you need it for? Yeah, so some of that terminology that they do use in the exam isn't the same as here, so some people will do better at one than the other. Also, if people don't care that they're talking to a computer, then self-pip will work for them for the spoken.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that they don't get, and this is something that is a little tip for you, is that if your client is taking the spoken part, you shouldn't stop talking. So when they ask you a question, don't stop talking. Keep talking because that's how they're evaluating. So when you don't speak and you only this is one time in immigration that you want them to keep on talking all the time, like I do, you just have them keep elaborating and that type of thing because it's going to give them a better language score because they'll have more to work with because they record it and they go over it and they see how well is that person expressing themselves and that kind of thing. So when you say, okay, tell me about your last vacation, I went to Australia, it doesn't tell them that much. Right? So I went to Australia and I went to Sydney and I spent 3.5 weeks with my best friend who I haven't seen in 20 years and her daughter was, exactly, that's a huge one because usually spoken skills are really one of the lower skills usually, and that's one of the reasons because they don't keep talking, so they've got nothing to base the criteria on. So that's one way that you can instruct your clients when you haven't taken your exam. So if his exam is, going to expire, you do want to have it updated. You can give him little tips like that. If he's more comfortable with IELTS, let him go with IELTS. Yeah.
Okay, well, so we have two
plans right now. We can't do much else as far as brainstorming and that kind of thing until we have the answers to those questions. I think both are viable. Whether or not we apply in Canada, out of Canada, or there may be exempt from applying both, they can go to the border and apply for certain things sometimes. I don't think they're going to be eligible for that. And I'm not a big fan of flag polling if they're not clearly eligible. So those are kind of some of the things that you want to take into consideration. So
definitely.
Yeah. So, but those are the things that I would actually speak to them about and get answers on, and then we can kind of develop. We have kind of tentative plans based on their answers to this. We have a couple things we need to look at legislatively and procedurally to find out whether they will qualify or not, and then the big one is can she apply for a study permit if she's wanting one? And if she can, that gives us a whole huge scope of flexibility as far as keeping them here. There may be more work to make them eligible for other things. But, and again, we may be, if she can get, like I said, if she can get acceptance for September, it may come to the point where she actually doesn't need the study permit.
Exactly.
So in that case, like her intent is to go and study, but if we can get everything done prior to September, we can maybe even avoid her needing to go to school and being in authorized.
And having potential PR application submitted prior to that, because he could submit a PR application while he's on implied status.
Exactly. It depends on the program because some of them he can't. So like the AIMP, he can't apply under that. So if he can't get that under implied status, then he can't get the PR. But some of them he can.
Yeah.
So
the certificate of qualification,
he doesn't need the job offer and he could apply right away.
Yeah.
He still needs to maintain status, but in that case, it's probably okay if they just extend their visitor records waiting for a decision. Right, because he won't be out long, a few months, most likely, depending on when the invitation is, though. So, and I'll try to confirm if I have to contact my source on federal skilled trade. If I don't have that information, because I think I do, then I'll ask that question too.
But I'm talking about doing a certificate of qualification, even if he doesn't get to it right away, because their main focus will be submitting that extension application, right?
Right.
I'm saying that he could do certificate of qualification
and not need the LMIA
status, and the application is pending. So, you know, there are options.
Well, that's the other thing to talk to him about too. Is can he get that certificate of qualification? Because then he doesn't need the LMIA at all. He can work on the basis of his wife's, he can work as an open work permit holder under the basis of his wife's study permit and remain in Canada for up to 2 years if she continues to study. But in the meantime, if he gets that qualification certificate, he can apply immediately for federal skilled trades. He's saved his status, he's kept his family stable. He doesn't need the job offer. He has one anyway, so he can just get a written one from the employer. He can, he's got the job offer. He doesn't have the LMIA. He doesn't need one then, if he's got that certificate of qualification. And then he can apply for federal skilled trades. It's not a moratorium because he didn't need the LMIA to begin with. So we have some questions to answer. So can he get the certificate of qualification? Is the wife willing to go back to school for 2 years? And he can then work on that basis, at least to buy them time, because he doesn't have time right now. That's the huge thing right now. He doesn't have the time. We can figure out a way to qualify him however we do that, but he needs to buy time. And that's the best way to do it.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Good.
Good to go?
Good to go, yes.
Okay. So I will get back to you. And I don't know if you see this here, my Facebook page here.
I do have to follow it. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm actually, if you're not in there, asked to join, and because I go on in like 10 minutes. There's little things that I talk about in here that you can learn from. Yeah. It's free, so that kind of thing. So
really cool.
Okay.
As far as the recording from today goes, do you think this is something I can send to the client?
You can if you choose. You might be better off to
explain the options.
I mean, because we've kind of gone all over the place, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think he needs to know a lot of that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't have any problem with you sharing it with him. Mm-hmm. But it's not necessarily going to make sense to him, because a lot of this is also kind of a brainstorming type of a project as well, to figure out where is he going to be eligible, where are our weaknesses, what do we have to ask questions on, and that kind of thing. I'd almost say ask him the questions. Let's figure out plans of action, and we can maybe give him a recording on that one instead. Yeah. Something that's a little bit more organized and that kind of thing might be a little bit more. Reasonable.
In regards to any application that we decide to go ahead with, would you be willing to mentor me through it?
Yes. Well, we do. I mean, I do co-counseling and consultation like this. So whatever works best for you. Co-counseling, basically, I take 20% of your fee. Yeah. And I do walk the whole thing with you. Unless you need me to do a lot more. I mean, if it's really a really complicated case, you probably shouldn't be taking it anyways. But then I'll take a higher amount because my actual involvement would be a lot higher. But generally, for most people, I'm going to say we're going to talk about it first, which we've already done already. So we don't really need a whole lot more. We develop a plan of action, which is the next stage, and then I'm here for questions anytime you have them. And then I do a review of your applications when they're done. Gotcha. So for that, I take 20%, but you're going to do the bulk of the work. The client needs to know I'm involved. So you should list my name on the retainer agreement, because that protects both of us. It protects you as well. Alternatively, if you don't think you need me for that much, and I'm not so sure you do, you can just do this. Just book a consultation with me at the rates, because I think I gave you the student rate, right? Whenever you need it. So if you just want me to, I've got run into these, and then you don't have to actually, if you've got another client you want to talk about in that period of time too, you can do that. Or if you just have burning questions or anything like that, you can use that time however you choose to use it. And it doesn't matter either way. I'm going to send you an invoice with the amount. You can build that into your retainer, either one into your retainer. Obviously, co-counsel is already built in, but the consultation part of it, you can build that into what you need. I actually have a couple of consultants that do that. They say, okay, I know this is going to be complicated. I'm going to build in two consultations with Robin at X number of dollars, and they already build it into the price. So not only do they get it from their clients, but then they get an invoice and they can write it off as a business expense at the end of the year. So that works out as long as it's something I can help you with, right? So this is something that I can help you with. I have a couple questions that I'm not sure about, and those are some of the things that we need to know, but I have sources myself that I can ask. It's not going to be a big deal to find out. So that's your choice either way.
Yeah.
But you don't have to let them know about my involvement with a consultation.
Gotcha. Now, quick question about your recommendation as far as the quote goes on the option that we've talked about.
Okay, so when we do a co-counseling, well, we still need to have a plan of action. That's the first thing.
We need study permit, work permit, study permit extension for the kids.
Okay, so we're looking at primarily, at this point, we're looking at we're going to look at it just strictly as we're looking to keep them in Canada. So we're looking at study permit, associated work permit, and for the kids, study permits. For me, I would typically say, well, I mean, I would say anywhere between, for the study permit itself, $1,500 to $2,000 for a new consultant. For work permit is usually $2,000 to $2,500. Visitor records about $1,000 to $1,500, but you're looking at a family. So a lot of their information isn't changing. So what I usually do is I do 100% on the primary applicant, which is the student. So if you wanted to yourself say about $1,500, you know, go on the lower side because you are new, but it's still a reasonable amount. Maybe add $1,000 for $1,000 to $1,500 for the dependents. So talk to them about that. Not each. You can do them all together because they're easy applications. It depends what you're applying for, though. It depends what you're applying for. Are you applying for study permits for the kids, or are you just applying for visitor records? I would recommend study permits because it makes it really clear. Yeah. Especially if they're starting to get older, then, you know, at certain times they must have a study permit. They may not be at that stage yet, but, you know, I personally think that they should have study permits. It just makes life a whole lot easier. And for a difference in $50.
Totally. Okay, so the professional fees for the whole application, $3,000.
You can start, I would say the very lowest is $3,000. If you feel that you can get up to $4,500 for the entire application, that's also reasonable. Don't forget that basically what I say if I'm co-counseling and if I'm doing an actual co-counsel where you're getting the 80% and I'm getting the 20%, I give you a minimum. So I'd say $3,000 is a minimum. And then I would get 20% of that. You would get the rest. Yeah. You're predominantly responsible for it, but they need to know that their information is being shared with me. And I'm there to guide you along the way. And like my reason for that is because I found that, and some of your fellow students didn't like the fact that I talk this way, but I'm going to talk this way anyways because this is mine. Basically, what it is that when I got to a point where I was helping like 350 people, not all at the same time, but 3/4 of my day was, you know, answering questions on the forums and answering questions by email and that kind of thing. And I was spending so much time doing that, it became an expectation by a number of them, and I wasn't getting any money. Right? So then my daughter lost her, well, she didn't lose her job, she went on disability, and she didn't get, so all of a sudden we lost the main source of income in our household. And so that became a little problematic. So I had a discussion with some senior consultants. They said, what, you're doing that for free? Are you kidding? So essentially what it is,
you know, like you have experience, you have knowledge, your time is money.
Exactly. So, and I mean, I had a hard time at first doing that, but basically what it is that what you would pay me doing a co-counsel is nothing close to what my hourly rate is for a client, but it's enough to make it worth me doing. And it's also enough to make it worth, because some people, they just say, oh, I'm co-counseling, and they don't consult. they just say, well, I did it and it's not my fault because Robin didn't do anything. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, but you didn't do anything. You didn't tell me anything. You gave me money and then you went away. That doesn't make it okay, right? So it also, so the amount has to be appropriate to make sure you're invested in my health as well. And there's other things as well, because I want to make sure that people are charging appropriate fees. I literally had somebody said, I want to co-counsel with you, and I said, okay, this is how much you should charge. I think it was $1,500 and that kind of thing. It was a student, and came back to me later and said, and with a whole list of questions, and she says, oh, by the way, the student couldn't afford the fees, so I decided to do it pro bono. And I said, okay, first of all, I'm going to give you my opinion. Anybody who's here as a student is here under an economic stream unless they're under a scholarship. She's not under a scholarship, right? Right. Okay, so she's here under an economic stream and she can't afford your fees for a 4-year study permit. She can't afford to be a student in Canada.
Exactly.
And she goes, oh, I didn't think of that. But I've already told her, I said, well, here's the thing. My cost based on that is $400. So you can pay me $400. I'll help you.
And you know what? I completely agree with you, Robin.
And that kind of thing. And the thing is I might have agreed to do it pro bono, but she didn't talk to me about it first. So that's my big thing. If there were compelling reasons, that's the thing. So this is one of the things that I insist on, is that you have to tell me what's going on. Just like I expect of my clients, you're my client. I actually open a client file for you. Because if you ever need anything, then I have copies of all the invoices. So if you need them for your bookkeeping and that kind of thing as well. So I have client invoices for you, and that kind of thing. So it's. I mean, if we can't work together properly, then we can't work together and that kind of thing. So it really comes down to that. But I still have to, at the end of the day, I still have to pay my licensing and my fees, because if I spend all my time helping everybody for free, my license doesn't get maintained and I can't help anybody. So when I had other consultants mention that to me, I go, you know what, that just makes total sense now. I get it now. Because I'd be just happy just to sit here and help consultants all day long, to be quite honest. I do a lot of it. It's actually probably about 2/3 of my business.
Really?
To be quite frank. Yeah, at this point in time, within the last, since I got back from Australia, so since August, it's about 3/4 of my business now is just helping other consultants, and I love it.
It's great.
I absolutely love it, because I mean, the teaching, because it's kind of along the lines of teaching. I love teaching. I love the teaching part of it, but
I really appreciate you doing that, because I have contacted, I think, all of my instructors from the UBC course, and there were only 2, including you, that were remotely interested in in doing some sort of mentoring and stuff.
Well, some are too busy, and others aren't invested. I mean, I don't know all the instructors from UBC. I know a large number of them, and the ones that I know are not only interested in helping, but some of them are too busy. They're just really busy. So teaching is a little extra that they do, and for them, that's the end of it. I'm actually creating education programs. So this actually, doing this kind of work helps me to figure out better ways of teaching, whether it's a one-on-one or in a group. So it actually helps me to figure out how to do that in that setting as well. So I learned something by doing this as well. It's not immigration stuff per se, but I learned better about interacting with individuals, which is something I need to do for some of the projects I have in place. So it works out. It works out to be beneficial. So anyways, I got to take off here, so I'm going to close the recording. It's